comfortably appointed than the one downstairs. They both get satellite, and the basement isn't exactly a dungeon. But my upstairs room is, thanks to Sinea, more like one of those home theaters the rich folk have. There are only 2 chairs, matching overstuffed recliners, and double-thickness drapes to block the light. There's a big-screen TV, a VCR, a DVD player, a game console, a surround sound system, and all the electronic bric-a-brac to run it all. Really a great room, and no doubt unusual for an Iowa farmhouse. It's generally understood that anyone can come in when the door is open and take a seat in the other chair if it's vacant. Whether or not I feel like talking is another matter, and depends largely on whether or not I feel like talking. An interesting news item on Taiwanese independence ends, and I surf through the news channels for something else of interest. There's a lot of financial news at this time of day. I don't care for financial news, or any news, really, unless something big is happening. Nothing big is happening. I check the Weather Channel for typhoons, tornadoes, hurricanes, or flooding, but everything is calm. Oh well. "You're wearing shoes," I say to Martin. "Oh, geez," he mutters and takes off his sandals. He slips them behind the chair so Sinea won't see them if she looks in. But Sinea sees everything, and Martin knows it. I may be the great enlightened guy they all come to see, but Sinea is the all-seeing, all-knowing mistress of the manor, and even I am just another dull-witted child in her presence. I'm looking at the TV, and Martin is looking at me. He wants to talk. I suppose I should respond negatively to his attempts to finesse me, but there's nothing on TV, and Martin can be interesting at times. I give him a mildly exasperated nod, and he accepts. "I've made a lot of progress on the assignment you gave me," he spurts enthusiastically. I balk at the word assignment, but it's actually fairly accurate, so I say nothing. "Remind me," I say, although I need no reminding. Martin has spent more than 2 decades in the thrall of one of the West's better-known spiritual leaders, and has come away with a head full of pseudo-Hindu gibberish as fiendishly entangled as the Gordian knot. I've been trying to ease him towards the Alexandrian solution of slicing cleanly through the knot in a single stroke rather than wasting further decades trying to untangle it. But Martin is slow in letting go of his belief system and the allegiances that came with it. Last time we met, Martin brought a book and read to me several dozen stanzas from the teachings of his former guru. The words were obviously those of a vast mind expounding upon timeless mysteries, and I could easily understand why seekers would flock to one of such limitless insight. But when Martin finished reading, I had absolutely no idea what had just been said. More importantly, although he thought otherwise, neither did Martin. To illuminate this point for him, the assignment I gave Martin was to reduce the selection he shared with me down to a single coherent concept, one lucid sentence. The idea for this assignment came to me as I listened to Martin read his former guru's baffling words with shimmering enthusiasm. I was struck by the exalted sage's ability to mix a few simple concepts together in such a way as to sound sublimely profound without actually saying a whole lot. The passages Martin read to me had to do with the tripartite of perceiver, act of perception, and object perceived, the 3 gunas of Hinduism, the benefits of silencing the mind, and something about ascending levels of consciousness, each more wonderful than the last. There was probably some overlighting theme that tied them all together into a unified whole that made Martin shimmer. But what the overlighting theme might have been, I can't say, because That would have entailed listening much more closely than I actually did. It was clear to me that Martin was trying to display his mastery over some big thoughts. He also seemed to think that he was educating me, or perhaps acting as self-appointed ambassador to me from his previous teacher. But, like I said, I don't know because I lost track of what he read pretty near the beginning. All I ever really need from a student at the start of a conversation is a flare, a simple locator beacon. The student is traveling from wherever they are at the moment toward the state of abiding non-dual awareness. That journey is what I help them with because I am positioned high above with a clear view of the entire terrain. I always know where the destination is, but I need the student to send up a signal to show me their current position. I just need to get a lock on their location, and I usually have it within the first few words or sentences they utter. For instance, I see where Martin is, and I can see that he has himself twisted up in some brambles. He may feel an urge to describe his current position to me in exhaustive detail, but I already know all I need to guide him out. Martin may want to spend the next 20 years studying the local flora, but I will encourage him to pull out a machete and hack his way out and continue his journey. Sitting next to me now, Martin reminds me about the passages he read to me and my request that he boil it down. I nod and ask what he has come up with. Martin's interpretation of the text and its value was off the mark in the first place. But this little exercise was not really about clarifying the text for him anyway. Rather, it was about coaxing him toward doing his own thinking instead of parroting wisdom-esque concepts and abdicating responsibility for himself to any non-Martin authority. In the course of this process, Martin will probably develop a deeper insight into the knowledge he was twirling and spinning like a fancy six-shooter, but that isn't the point. And, like I said before, Martin can be a pretty interesting guy. He's in his mid-40s, and he's been to a lot of exotic places and done a lot of interesting things. He's a very large man at around 6.5 feet tall and nearly 300 pounds. He's an expert body worker and not a bad cook when Sonea gives up the kitchen for a meal. He's all or part Native American, played college ball for Northwestern, was a Green Beret for 6 years, and a spiritual renunciate for 10. Overall, he's an impressive and likable fellow. He's been in the house for a few months and is generally able to grasp the things he's supposed to and move on. I've known he was stuck on the outside authority thing since he first arrived, but I had never poked at it directly. The last thing I wanted to do was get in a pissing contest about who had the cooler knowledge, his former teacher being a whole different order of magnitude in the guru hierarchy from yours truly. Meaning that if I wasn't careful, I might accidentally send Martin back to the guy who takes 1,200 words and 15 references to ancient texts in 3 languages to say, "What's up?" What Martin came up with for his assignment, I realized within a few seconds, was basically nothing more than a simplified rewording of the original text. He was explaining it, not clarifying or reducing it. "Stop," I say. He stops. "You're just using different words to say the same thing." "Well, yeah," he agrees, "but I'm using less words and explaining it in more Western terms." I flip through the channels and stop to watch Samantha trying to cool an irate Larry Tate. "Why do you think I asked you to summarize the passages you were reading to me, Martin?" "I thought that you were interested in it and might be having trouble, following it," he says. Larry has stormed out, and now Samantha is calling Dr. Bombay, a sure sign that something's amiss, possibly of Dr. Bombay's doing. He's probably turned Darren into a polo pony, and now Larry needs Darren to pitch the big client. Dr. Bombay, however, cannot be reached because he's someplace exotic, riding Darren to victory in the final chukker of the big match. I'm just guessing, of course, but it can't be easy being Darren. Yes, I was having trouble with it, Martin. I sure was. Now, let's try this again. What I'd like you to do is boil this whole complex ganglion of guru speak down to a single, lucid concept. Summarize it. Hack away at it until you reach the core. Reduce it like an algebraic equation. Burn away all the excess and see what's left. Well, Martin begins, and I immediately know we're banging our heads up against his dogged reliance on outside authority. I think that what he means is, I interrupt, what does it matter what he means, Martin? He stares at me with his mouth slightly open. It's your head on the block, Martin. It's your clock that's ticking. I try a different approach. What's your mission statement, Martin? What's the point? What is it you hope to accomplish with your life? Freedom from bondage, he replies without hesitation. Liberation, oneness with all that is, unity consciousness. I manage to not hurl myself out the window. Okay, that's quite a list. Or do you figure those are all different ways of saying the same thing? Well, yes, he replies hesitantly, obviously wondering if I'm an imposter. Those are all different ways of saying enlightenment. Really? How do you know? Well, I've spent over 25 years. What, Martin? You've spent 25 years doing what? Everything. Studying, meditating, purifying myself, reading, attending lectures, learning everything I could about evolving spiritually. It occurs to me that this is exactly where Sarah's current heading will take her. 25 years of unfulfilled searching, all for the want of a little straight talk. What if you were to find out that it was all a waste? I ask him. He recoils, and I sense that he's on the verge of getting up and walking out. Bear with me here, Martin. We're just talking, just hypothetically. What if you found out that in order to achieve the enlightenment you speak of, you had to reject all the teachings you've ever received? Could you abandon all this knowledge you've acquired? Well, I don't really think. What's your priority? Enlightenment or the knowledge? I don't think. How long has your guru been teaching? Well, over 30 years. And how many of his students have achieved enlightenment? Well, that you know of personally. Well, I never... That you've heard of? It's not that there were rumors of. I don't think... What is it they're doing, Martin? The recipe for enlightenment they're promoting. What is it? Well, meditation and knowledge, basically. And in 30 years, they've never held someone up and said, look at this guy. He's enlightened, and we got him there. In 30 years, they don't have one? Don't you think they should have, like, an entire army of enlightened guys to show off by now? Well, it's not. After 30 years, they should have a few dozen generations of enlightened people. Even with only a quarter of them becoming teachers, they should have flooded the world by now, mathematically speaking, don't you think? I'm not asking all this as a teacher myself, mind you. I'm just asking as a consumer, or a consumer's advocate. Don't you think it's reasonable to ask to know a teacher's success rate? The proof is in the pudding, right? Didn't you ask them about the fruit of their teachings when you started with them? Well, that's not... Don't you think it's reasonable to ask? They're in the enlightenment business, aren't they? Or did I misunderstand you? Do they have something else going? No, But if Consumer Reports magazine did a report